This one is actually from an email I got from a listener. Let's see if I can find it. Ah, okay, here it is. It says, "How come I can't fish or swim in Glood's Pond? My grandpa talked about going there when he was a kid, but now it's fenced off. What happened?" Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, there is a pond up north near Brownsville. It's on a little side road off of 303, just past the light at Brownsville Highway. You could drive by it every day and not realize that it's there, except for one thing. The road is called Glood's Pond Road. I will put Google Maps in the show notes for you so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is Glood's Pond. What does the sign on this fence say? Stormwater Facility 635 collects runoff from your community to reduce flooding and improve water quality in streams, lakes, and bays. Huh. So Glood's Pond is a stormwater runoff? I wonder how that happened. Can a pre-existing pond be turned into a stormwater pond? Does this have something to do with the freeway, I wonder? Well, let's see what we can dig up. Dredge up? Yeah, dredge sounds more appropriate. Glood is the name of the family that homesteaded the area where the pond is located. Peter Johannes Glood. I'm honestly not sure what that pronunciation is. I've always said Glud, and I think that's wrong. I think that it's supposed to be Glood, so that's what I'm going to stick with. Peter Glood was a Danish immigrant who homesteaded in the Royal Valley area in 1886. He married Louise in 1887, but died in a shipwreck in 1906 off the Washington coast, leaving Louise with 6 children and a 160-acre homestead to care for. Louise sold a large portion of the homestead in 1909, but kept 40 acres, just enough for her and her family. She built the family home and a barn in 1912 and ran the farm clear up until 1941. She passed away in 1944. One of those 6 children was William Glood, aka Bill. And when he came of age, he wanted some land of his own. He bought the area that would become known as Glood's Corner, where the pond is located. He is the creator of the dam, which creates the pond, which, because of its size of 14 acres, holding 4.5 million gallons of water, it was too big for a small dam permit, and so he had to use a large dam permit category, the same one used by the Grand Coulee Dam, which seems a bit ridiculous for a homestead pond, but that's bureaucracy for you. Actually, Bill created 2 ponds, side by side. You'll see some of the oldest maps or newspaper articles refer to Glood's ponds, plural, but over time people just started thinking of them as one place. There's not much mention of the pond until the post-war era, when Glood's Pond turns to a life of crime. Not the family, though. Just the pond. You see, it turns out that Glood's Pond was involved in the infamous 1955 Silverdale bank robbery. The getaway car was discovered abandoned at Glood's Pond, riddled with birdshot, blood on the seats. But the money and the robbers were gone. They were never caught. Whoa. In December of 1957, the water level in Glood's Pond dipped low enough that it revealed a secret hidden in the water for 3 months: a cash register. This cash register was from the Silverdale hardware store, which had been burgled earlier in the fall. The cash register was emptied before it was thrown into the pond, and that itself would not have been an easy feat. Vintage cash registers? In the 1950s, they could weigh between 80 and 100 pounds. They were made of brass and cast iron. to get the thing out, they had to partially drain the pond and then dig the till out of the mud where it had sunk. Had Glood's Pond developed some kind of a reputation? Were these two crimes connected? We don't know. But before we can get to the light, we have to go through some more darkness. We should talk about the drownings. The first recorded death happens in January of 1973, in the middle of a cold snap. A car drives off the road just past the pond and goes into the creek that feeds it. The driver is thrown from the vehicle and lands face down in the deepest part of the creek, which had just recorded temperatures at 1 degree above zero. Workers at a nearby fish hatching project at the pond came running. 5 men pulled the driver out of the creek and up the snow-covered embankment, where they performed CPR until emergency services arrived. But the man was pronounced dead upon arriving at the hospital. And in August of 1977, divers were sent to the pond after a 911 call, where they pulled a teenage boy out of 15 feet of water. Attempts to resuscitate him were unsuccessful. The paper reported he had gotten too far out from shore while swimming with friends. Jesus, how big is this pond? I guess it was as deep as 17 feet in the middle. That's deeper than most swimming pools, for reference. Anecdotal accounts say that he got tangled in the lily pads and the natural growth inside of the pond, which trapped him underwater. I found lots of other rumors online about things that supposedly happened in the pond, like late night swimming, sailors misbehaving, and reports of weird junk that people found at the bottom of the pond. I couldn't verify any of it, but did people get up to late night shenanigans in an unattended pond? Probably. Did sailors go there? Not impossible. Was there junk on the bottom of the pond? This is a slightly clearer answer. Yes. But the pond was regularly drained and cleaned into the 80s. If things were being thrown in there, they were likely being found and taken back out. And now, let's get to the good stuff. The real wholesome stuff. Bill was generous with his land and his pond. They opened up their land as a community garden, and they taught families how to grow food. The pond was mostly unattended, but I also read some accounts that said Bill would come out to help teach kids how to swim, or sometimes act as a lifeguard for them. Glood's Pond becomes a summertime staple for kids growing up in Brownsville. They ride their bikes there in the summer for a swim, stopping at Sipe's Grocery on the way for a pop or an ice cream. The Gloods welcomed the Pogie Club to their pond. The Pogie Club is a fishing organization that can trace its roots back to the Great Depression, when unemployed people were looking for ways to fill their time and their bellies. By 1958, they were holding a kids' fishing party at Glood's Pond, and children of all means were invited to attend. If a child showed up, they handed them a fishing rod, and they taught them how to fish. The state would stock the pond with thousands of trout for the occasion, and no adults were allowed to fish there. It was truly about teaching the kids to fish. Children were often shuttled to the fishing party from all over town, and there was always plenty of hot chocolate to keep them warm. Glood's Pond was particularly good for the kids' fishing party because of its shape and its depth. A child casting a line from the shore of Glood's Pond has a good chance of pulling in a fish, which is not always the case at local lakes. The first run of pogie fishing lasted from 1958 to 1970. From 1971 to 1983, the pond chooses the fish over the fishermen and is used by the Domsea project to hatch and raise various types of salmon commercially. This works pretty well because Steel Creek, which was dammed to create the pond, was a salmon run that fed all the way down to the Brownsville Marina. After Bill passes, his son Clarence takes over the land and the pond. Clarence was also a member of the Pogie Club, and he welcomes the kids' fishing party back to the pond, and they were happy to return. The second run of fishing parties at the pond went from 1984 to 1991. Overall, there were 19 years worth of fishing parties held at Glued's Pond, over 33 years. Glued's Pond welcomed generations of young fishers. But after the fishing party in 1991, the Glued family fenced off the pond. Local folks get pretty upset about this, but the third generation of the Glued family went on the record to say this was because people had started dumping trash in the pond. They end up in a sort of catch-22, I think. The community is upset because they think of the pond as a community fixture, but it's not. It's a privately owned pond. It has to be cleaned and maintained to be safe, which is a huge undertaking. And instead of helping, the community is throwing trash into the pond. No one will want to let their kids swim or fish in a pond full of trash. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Yeah, I think I would fence it off too. The pond remains fenced off and inaccessible to the public until 1996, when the dam threatens to break. Upstream of the pond at the top of Steel Creek, grading and construction for the Walmart had began. And Walmart's arrival was its own drama. By the early 90s, everyone knew what Walmart did to local businesses. We'd watched it happen across the country, and even had front row seats when they came to Shelton. A lot of people did not want Walmart here. But Bremerton in 1993 was economically vulnerable. Downtown retail was already dead, killed off by the Silverdale Mall. Silverdale itself was at max capacity. No more room for expansion. Walmart saw an opportunity, and they took it. What followed was years of red tape and public opposition. The land wasn't zoned for commercial development. Neighbors fought it. The county demanded environmental impact studies. Walmart fought back at every step, dragging the process out until 1995, when they finally got permission to build. They started construction too late in the year and ignored the warnings of county officials. The result was that it rained during the grading process, and all of the loose dirt flowed into Steel Creek. It was carried downstream straight into Glued's Pond. The dam could not support the extra volume and pressure bearing down on the earthen berm. Emergency measures had to be taken to pop the cork on the dam because the floodgate was stuck. There's an article in 1997 that says the pond is still sitting empty, and I'm going to guess it was never refilled again. You know, I was convinced that the salmon run in Steel Creek and the environmentalism was going to be the downfall of Glued's Pond, but I think it was Walmart. My husband, who has been my sounding board for most of this, probably has the most realistic view of the situation. Was it Walmart? Or was it a combination of a decade of neglect, and then Walmart came along and just put the final nail in the coffin? And to be clear, I'm not trying to lay any blame at the feet of the family who owns the dam. There are actually dams just like this one all over the Pacific Northwest. Nowadays, they're called deadbeat dams. Since 1912, over 2,100 dams have been removed across the U.S., with 39 of them right here in Washington. Many were built for hydropower that's no longer profitable, or for recreation that stopped decades ago. They were properly permitted and installed, loved for a generation or two, but then they get old. Ownership passes to people who don't want the responsibility. Meanwhile, they could be blocking salmon runs or warming the water behind them. The problem is that removal is expensive and complicated, and it's often unclear who's responsible for fixing the damage these old dams have done. In a way, the early failure of Glued's Dam might have been fortunate for us. Many of these deadbeat dams take decades to resolve, and we might still be dealing with the environmental consequences today. But I can hear some of you saying, wait a minute, what do you mean it was drained and never refilled? I see it on my way to work, off the side of the highway. Well, here's the big reveal, folks. The pond you can see from Highway 303 today, the one we all think of as Glued's Pond, it isn't Glued's Pond at all. Remember that sign I read? Stormwater Pond 635? It's a completely separate modern stormwater pond. It was built in 2013. In fact, the area next to 303 where that pond is, it isn't even the same location as the original Glued's Pond. They were on the other side of the triangle, over by Brownsville Highway. The last remains of Glued's Pond disappeared with the rehabilitation of the salmon run in Steel Creek in 2007. The real pond, the one with the dam, the fishing, the bank robbery, the loot, the drownings, the Pogie Club parties, Bill's Salmon Hatchery. It's gone. And so, dear listener, I regret to inform you that the reason you can't fish in Glued's Pond like your granddad did before you is because Glued's Pond has been drained and gone for 25 plus years. Inherent in this question is the assumption that the stormwater pond on Glued's Pond Road must be Glued's Pond. Seems logical. But if you didn't visit the pond before it was drained, you wouldn't really know. The name stayed on the street. A new pond appeared in sort of the same area. And later generations, including myself, we all just assumed it was the same place. But it's not all loss and sadness in this story. Even though the pond is gone, I'm pleased to say that the tradition of the Pogie Club Kids Fishing Party lives on to this day. More than 350 kids fished for trout at Otto Jarstead Park in Gorst this year. And if they are anything like the kids that fished before them, they consumed at least 50 gallons of hot chocolate while doing it. Serious business. So, did you fish or swim in Glued's Pond? If so, I'd love to hear from you. Call the Bremelore tip line and tell me, what was it like? Do you have a question about Bremerton or its history? I want to hear it. You can find the show on social media at Bremelore, or visit the website www.bremelore.wtf. That's right, you heard me. Bremelore.whiskey tango foxtrot to leave me a voice message. I can't wait to hear from you.